Alright. Kanye. Ine. Today's lesson is going to be on breaking boards, the aspect of Taekwondo called Kyokpa, breaking. When you are instructing on breaking or teaching on breaking, first you need to realize that there's three parts of breaking that you need to pay attention to. Number one is the person that is breaking, the student that is breaking or attempting to break the board. You need to focus on their abilities, what you know about that student as far as their abilities to break which size board. Their age is a big factor in determining what size board they will break, and their individual abilities and talent that they have shown throughout their time in the class. Number two is the instructor, assistant, or holder. The holder of the board plays a vital part in the ability of the person to break the board, because if they jerk or move the board, it causes a problem for the one that's trying to break the board and may even injure that person. And also, we need to realize that the person that's holding the board has to take in consideration of their own safety. And the third thing is the examiner or the head table instructor, who is testing or grading the process of board breaking. The person that is holding the board is not being tested or graded as a testee or as a person that's actively involved in this particular part of the test to be graded on. But they are being evaluated, as all instructors are being evaluated at all times. But the person that is holding needs to make sure that the breaking technique is being done in a way that the examiner can view the technique to be able to grade it. It is the responsibility of the holder, in conjunction with that of the person that's doing the breaking, to make sure that they are not obstructing the view of the examiner to see the technique being performed or seeing the actual break taking place. We are concerned with two boards. Here we have a full-size board, which is approximately 11 inches by 10 inches, and they will be in various different thicknesses depending on the student, at the age and abilities of the student. And then we will have the half-size board, which is approximately 11 inches by 5 inches, and they come also in various thicknesses depending upon the abilities and the age of the student. Today, I'm going to mostly be utilizing the full-size board to show you the proper way to hold a board and the proper way a person's foot or hand should be making contact with the board. The half-size board is pretty simple. One person mostly can hold it and would never be needing support. You place one hand on the bottom holding the board, one hand on the top holding the board, and try to make sure that the foot or hand goes in the direction of the grain of the board. The darker part is the grain for younger students that don't understand that, and the lighter part is just the growth of the board. The grain is going from side to side. So if a technique is being performed, the foot or hand, the fingers need to be going in the same direction as the grain of the board. Now, if it was like a axe kick or something like that, where the foot is coming down on top of the board, then the board would be turned to the side this way, to where the foot would come down with the heel of the foot coming down on the board with the toes pointing in the same direction as the grain of the board going up. Now, for instructional purposes right now, we will just use the full-size board. When a student is preparing to break a board, the first thing we think about is tradition, the proper procedures and tradition. When a student is coming up to break a board, what they will do is they will let the holder know what technique they are going to use. Once the holder knows what technique they're going to use, then they will know what position the board needs to be in. And then they would have to determine whether the student is going to use the right hand or left hand or right foot or left foot. This is how they would determine where they are going to place the board. Now, board breaking with the foot, you want to try to get the student to bring the knee up and break the board approximately waist high. This, of course, varies with the ability of the student. We want to make sure that the student is pushed to do their best and try to go and improve on their best. However, we don't want them to walk away disappointed to think that they cannot ever break the board. We know sometimes they will be disappointed because they didn't do it the first time or second time. It's no guarantee that it's going to happen on the first time. We want to make sure that the students realize if you don't at first succeed, try again. Again, this is the full-size board. If a student is going to be breaking with a punch, a fist attack, what we want to do, we see the grain of the board going from side to side. Now, if a person is going to do a fist attack or a reverse punch, when you do a reverse punch, you throw the punch and rotate that fist and the knuckles to where the top part of the hand is going the same direction as the grain of the board. So I would hold the board with the grain going from left to right. As I throw the punch, I twist, and the top part of my hand, the knuckles, the top part of the knuckles is going parallel or the same direction as the grain of the board. Okay, now as I stated with the half-size board, if we're doing an axe kick, we would rotate the board this way and raise it, and the foot would come down on top of the board with the heel making contact with the board, the toes pointing up the same direction as the grain of the board. With a back kick, you would come with the grain going from side to side, because a back kick is basically going to be like a roundhouse kick hitting with the bottom or knife edge of the foot. The toes would be going from side to side. Knife hand attack, the ridge part of the hand is making contact with the board. The fingers are going from side to side in the same direction as the grain of the board. So once a person is told which technique they're going to use and they decide which hand they're going to use, then the holder of the board will position themselves to where the technique can take place with the line of sight from the examiner being able to see the technique. So if I have a student who wants to break a board with a roundhouse kick, and I know they're using their right foot and they're coming around and doing a roundhouse kick, I don't want the student to have their back to the instructor, saying the camera is the instructor. I don't want to have my back facing the instructor. They cannot see the technique. They cannot see the breaking technique. It is obscured by our bodies. What we want to do is we want to turn to the side to where they can get a better angle of the technique. The person breaking the board would be on one side, the holder of the board would be on the other side, and the technique would be done in an angle where visualization could take place from the instructor. So also, some instructors, some students are pretty powerful, and sometimes it would require a second person to help support a holder, because we don't want a holder to get up to take place and to hold a board and be flinching or pulling back as a student is trying to break a board because they're giving away from the force. You want the force to be full and solid. You want to apply the resistance, even to lean into it a little bit if necessary. However, we don't want to bend the elbows, because with the elbows bent, the force from the kick can force the board back to the holder. You want to lock the elbows in place. You want to lock the elbows in place, having a good grip on the board. Sometimes the thumb placed on the back of the board helps support and make sure that the board is straight for the student to make the kick. You don't want the board to be crooked. You want it to be straight to where the foot can go straight through it and not create a splintering problem for the person that's holding the board. I mean, not for the person holding the board, but for the person that's doing the kick. A lot of times the back stance is the best technique for holding a board, but it could also be a forward stance now, depending on the kick. The process of two people holding a board, you hold on the corners. Hold on the corners of the board. And the hand that's on the inside of the board, the inside hand that's on the board could be on the top, and the hand that's on the bottom is the hand that's furthest away from the board. Away from the inside of the board. So this being the inside of the board to the outside of the board, outside edge of the board, one hand on the top, my inside shoulder. One hand on the bottom, my outside shoulder. The person that's on the other side of the board, assisting in the holding, inside shoulder, hand on the top. Outside shoulder, hand on the bottom. The fingers will always be the part of the hand that is exposed to the kicker. The fingers will always be the part of the hand that is exposed to the kicker. The target should be in here. Sometimes we get our fingers kicked, and yes, sometimes they hurt, but we also are in the process of trying to make sure that they have the best target that they can have. So knowing the student, knowing their abilities, you try to make sure that the target is easiest for them to hit by placing it waist high and possibly shoulder height. Depending on the student, you might even go above the shoulder, but the optimal area of target or targeting the board is from waist high to shoulder height. Waist high to shoulder height. That is your optimal target of placing the board. Now, as far as safety for the holder of the board, when you have placed the board in position for the kick to take place, you want to make sure that prior to the kick, when the student lets you know that they are ready to kick, you turn your head away from the student. You turn your head away from the student so that you are not looking at the break that's taking place. You want to make sure that your head is turned away from the kick coming at you. This is to protect your eyes from any splintering that may come, and also to help you to prevent you from reacting to the kick coming and jerking and pulling back. So you want to make sure that the student has the ability to do the kick and do it in the positioning of the board that you have it. You want to make sure that the student is able to push themselves to break the board that you have acquired for the thickness of the board. You have it in the position, and you want to make sure that the examining table, or those who are grading the student on the kick, can actually see the kick. Now, protocol, when you come up, the student wants to place the board where they want to make the attempt. They might do one or two tests with not breaking the board, but actually placing their foot or hand to where they want to actually take the attempt to break the board. And then once they are satisfied that that distance or that height is where they want it, then they both, holder and student, when they are ready, will face the examining table or the person who is grading them. Come to attention, Charut, Kelnier, bow, and then they will face each other. Charut, Kelnier, and bow, and then they will go back to the position that they had decided that the student wants the board to be in, and the holder is going to place the board in, and they will execute the kick. Once the kick is executed, or the hand technique is executed, the break is completed, they both come to attention facing each other. They both bow to each other. The holder gives the two parts of the board to the student who broke them. They both face the front desk or the examiners. They come to attention, they bow, and then they go off their separate directions, and the student can take their boards to their previous position. Hopefully this information is helpful to you on board breaking technique. We want to make sure that if you have any questions, you can always contact Mr. Fleetwood Jr. with any questions. And again, two different size boards, half size, full size, positioning of the board, positioning of the foot and hand on the board for the breaking protocol, making sure that the table or the examiner can see the actual technique being broken, being executed as they break the board, and above all else, the safety protocol of turning your head, locking your elbows, and not jerking to pull away from the attempt at breaking the board. Once again, we thank you for your patience and perseverance, and hope to see you next time. And God bless. Charut, Kenye, Kamsahamnida.